add to this, this is the fellow who interviewed Ghislaine Maxwell and had softball questions. And right after that interview, she ended up in a camp with access to, of all things, a puppy, according to the reports. And this is somebody who is a convicted abuser of minors and women, and was found to have been really the right hand and an abuser herself with Jeffrey Epstein. That's also under his watch. You have on that chart 6 members of Congress who this administration, under Todd Blanche's leadership, they sought to indict them for, as you said, exercising their First Amendment activity in actually speaking out and saying what was true about the fact that people in the military have an obligation not to follow illegal orders. Remember that, illegal, they weren't saying don't follow legal orders. And so there's such a litany of issues for Todd Blanche. And I totally agree with you that if confirmed, it is really saying the Senate are giving a stamp of approval for this kind of conduct going forward. And that's the kind of thing where, the Senate, you would hope, would think about sort of the goose-gander problem. If they're going to think this is appropriate for the DOJ to do in a Republican administration with respect to Democratic members of Congress, would they really think that's appropriate in the reverse situation where a Democratic president were doing this to Republican members of Congress? Of course not. It's just inappropriate under any democratic rules of the game and rules of the law.
We are back with Democratic Senator Cory Booker, who is on the pivotal Foreign Relations Committee as we deal with Trump's Iran deal. Welcome back.
Thank you so much. It's good to be on, Ari.
Senator, let's look at the history. Here was Trump on the Obama deal.
In other words, at the point when the United States had maximum leverage, this disastrous deal gave this regime, and it's a regime of great terror, many billions of dollars, some of it in actual cash. A great embarrassment to me as a citizen and to all citizens of the United States.
How does that line up tonight?
Well, by his own definition, Donald Trump is an embarrassment. He has capitulated not to the gains of what the Obama deal did. He has capitulated by giving Iran everything that they wanted. Again, look at this deal. By his own critique, it is a deal that gives them hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars. And then we don't even get the things that the Obama deal, the JCPOA, got and secured, like getting nuclear fissile material out of the country, snap inspections, and more.
Yeah, and you mentioned the inspections. New York Times noting the U.S. eases sanctions. Vance says Iran will resume nuclear inspections, although Vance and Trump have been all over the place in this process. If confirmed, the provisions would be in line with an Obama-era deal. This is the Times. The President Trump tore up in 2018, as mentioned. Vance hailed this round of talks as the foundation for lasting peace. I guess the question is not so much the back and forth between these political parties, but what does it tell you that when all is said and done, the best the Trump folks can do is reach for what we might call a pragmatist or centrist Obama-style system to deal with what everyone agrees has been a very difficult regime over there?
Well, they won't get the same deal that we got from the JCPOA under Obama, because remember, that had the leverage of potential military intervention. It had the Chinese, the Russians, our Western allies. It was a significant group of people pushing Iran into that box. He tore that all up. He let Pandora out of the box. They rushed to enrich. Then he said we were going to bomb, and then he began his lies. The first bombing that they did last year, they said we obliterated their nuclear program. That was a lie. He said he was going to get regime change. Well, he got a more extreme regime, so that was a lie. He said he was going to aid the tens of thousands of people. He said help is on its way to the Iranian people. Well, that was a lie. He said we're going to end their nuclear program. Well, we see thus far that was a lie. So he has repeatedly told us what he was going to do, including getting that unconditional surrender. Now we realize that the person surrendering unconditionally is not the Iranians. It is Donald Trump himself surrendering all of our leverage and giving them hundreds of billions of dollars, and we're left with nothing, no specifics, no deal, no inspections, nothing. And let me make a prediction that I am very confident in. 60 days are going to pass by, and they will not have any kind of deal. And he'll be saying, oh, we're just extending it, kicking it down the curb, just like he has done with every other kind of deal that he has not been able to accomplish.
Do you think that's a specifically duplicitous strategy? Because all the hard stuff is later, and if it gets worked out, sometimes diplomats, I would say other administrations in both parties have been entitled to more good faith than we can credibly cover them because the president lies all the time. But there are times when diplomats say, we're going to deal with this later for good reason. And we've seen that in the Mideast process with Israel-Palestine. Here, are you suggesting, though, that this is duplicitous from the start on the side of the Trump administration?
Yeah, he's the Don of duplicity. And let me explain why. He got himself into a trap with no way out. He led the most powerful nation on the planet Earth into a stalemate with the Iranians, where we were still inflicting pain on them, but they were inflicting pain on the global economy. He was months before midterm, and now he found himself in a crisis with the American people, both sides of the aisle, saying enough of all of this. He couldn't get out of that, so he's created some kind of fiction. He is lying to the American people, saying, hey, we won here, we got some kind of great deal here. But most of the world, including here in the United States and in Iran, know that he actually lost and capitulated to an Iranian regime. They checkmated him, and he is now the big loser, and now he continues to lie about it.
And I have 1 minute left, Senator Booker. I mentioned how the DOJ is facing setbacks in court in Minnesota and elsewhere. Do you think there's anything else the Congress should do, particularly going into the midterms, to try to better stop what appears to be, according to this judge, illegal efforts to harass opponents with grand jury subpoenas and worse?
This is not the DOJ anymore. It's not the Department of Justice. It's DOI, the Department of Injustice. Look at what they're doing. They're using our precious resources that should be going after gang cartels, doing national security, going after the most worst criminals there are. And what is Donald Trump using millions and millions of dollars of the DOJ resources to go after his perceived political enemies with very little to show for it, frankly. And so this is something that it should be awakening the American people as we get closer to this election. Donald Trump doesn't care about anybody but Donald Trump. He's getting richer as you get poorer. This election is not Democrat or Republican. It is not right or left. This is an election about, will we tolerate a man that is so deeply unjust and so deeply cruel, corrupt, and chaotic in his way he is leading this country?